just put that thing
To start, Rabbi, I'd like to congratulate Gali and Rabbi Pinto and the bar mitzvah of Mendy that took place last Monday. He did amazing. We're happy. Well, actually, he's the lucky husband of Gali and 3 beautiful children. Rabbi Pinto has been the senior rabbi at the Spanish and Portuguese for about 1.5 years. And we're very lucky to have him and his wife, of course. And tonight he's going to talk to us about the relations of the body and soul. I'm guessing from a rabbinical and religious point of view. So go ahead, Rabbi. Take it away.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Grace. Thank you to the whole sisterhood, first of all, for organizing such a beautiful series. Unfortunately, there's so many times I wanted to join the series and I couldn't find the time. Hopefully I'll have a lot more time next time to join I've been hearing a lot of beautiful things about this series, about this whole series, and I'd like to congratulate Grace and the entire sisterhood, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come here tonight and share some insights. So tonight I will be presenting you with the Jewish view of the relationship between the body and soul. More precisely, the Maimonides relationship, explanation of relationship between the body and soul. You will go through the whole presentation and just remember the one word, the Rambam. The Rambam is the acronym of Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, better known as Maimonides. And through the whole video through the whole presentation, we'll be presenting his view on the body, the relationship between the body and the soul. Just a quick introduction, who was the Rambam? So as I mentioned, his name was Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon. Rambam was a great philosopher. He lived in the 12th century, was born in Cordova and passed away in Fostat, which is Cairo today, what we know as ancient time was called Fostat. He passed away in Cairo and was buried in the land of Israel in Tiberia. It's interesting enough to see that when you go to the resting place of the Rambam, of Rabbeinu Moshe, you find a slogan that is known to all Israelis, or to not only Israelis too, but Jews across the globe. Mi Moshe ad Moshe lo kam ke Moshe. From Moses to Moses, none has risen as Moses himself, meaning Moses. What's interesting about the Rambam is that he's so universal. Everyone can find their place inside the Rambam, whether you're a Talmudist, whether you're into halacha, whether you're into medicine, mystics, philosophy. All of these elements are found inside the writings of the Rambam himself, which is unprecedented in all of Jewish literature. The Rambam is known to be a great Talmudist, a doctor, one of the greatest philosophers of his time, and recognized as one of the greatest philosophers of his time, both among Jews and non-Jews alike. The Rambam dedicated his life to bring the teaching of the Talmud and the Halacha to the masses. One of his goals in life was to bring teaching and knowledge to the masses, and not only to the intellectuals. So let's start with his view on what is the soul, or more like, what is the main component of the human being. Let me just share the screen with you right now. Bear with me. Here we go. So let's get straight to it. The soul, according to the Rambam's philosophy, the soul is the main component of the human being. Now, when we look carefully at the Rambam, what does that mean, the main component of the human being? When we look in the writings of the Rambam and quoted in many places, I didn't want to bring any sources here, because if I'd have to quote all the sources, it will be many of them. So if we look through the whole spectrum of the writings of the Rambam, whether in Mishneh Torah, which one of his writings, or we look into his introductions to the Talmud, we find that the Rambam brings this idea, namely also in the 8th chapters of the introduction of the ethics of the fathers. And the Rambam says that the main component of the human being is the soul. Meaning, what does that mean? That means that everything stems from the soul. We can't separate, and we'll see that later on, we can't separate from the body and the soul. But if we are to point out that one specific, where everything starts from, it starts from the soul. Whether it's the health of the soul, which we'll see later on, or the health of the body, is all dependent on the health of the soul. And as we see right away, the health of the soul is projected to the body. And we'll see this idea reoccurring over and over through the writings that we'll see together. This is well anchored in the verse that says, "Take therefore good heed unto your souls." And the Rambam is teaching us here that according to, this is a verse, by the way, from Deuteronomy, right here, take therefore good heed unto your souls is a verse from Deuteronomy. And according to the Rambam, the Torah is very specific about talking about the soul and not the body. Meaning, not that the Torah disregards entirely, God forbid, the whole idea of the body, but it starts from the soul. And therefore the verse is very careful in telling us, take good heed unto your souls, and not only your bodies, or not your bodies, because everything stems from that. Now, when we speak about the soul and what is a soul, we'll see a little bit later on, but according to the Rambam, when the soul is healthy, and we'll discover a little bit on what does it mean that for the soul to be healthy, and how do we achieve that, we'll see later on. But the psyche is the essence and control all human physical, psychological, and spiritual functions. Meaning that if you have a healthy soul and your soul is in a state of health, and we'll see, by the way, I want to just say, open a parenthesis, we'll see later on where the Rambam quotes something called mentally ill. And you'll see it in one of the quotes here. Just bear in mind, the mentally ill, according to the Rambam, doesn't mean necessarily someone that has problem, some kind of disabilities or anything. Mentally ill is the disease of the soul, meaning that according to the Rambam, the people that lived in Sodom and Gomorrah were mentally ill, not in the way of having a disability, but their set of moral and intellectual understanding of the world were completely crooked, were completely disarray of what is the norm. According to the Rambam, the people of Sodom and Gomorrah were ill in a way where they wanted to create a society where one should not help the other. One should not bring people into his house. One should not do good deeds. And that, according to the Rambam, is the mentally illness that we'll see through the whole presentation here. So when we start, and when a person wants to go on the right path of living a life that is full spiritually and physically, it stems all from the soul. That's where it starts. We're not separating from the soul and the body in a sense where they create a human being is composed of a soul and a body, but all of a person's equilibrium between both of them starts at the soul and not the body. Okay, now let's see it for a second. When we speak about the soul and we say that everything stems from the soul, do we have many souls? How do we define a soul? Is a soul something that is based on our functions? Is it based on my ability to think about different things? My ability to do good deeds? Is that each one of those categories are defined as souls or as intellectuals? And if so, that means that the soul is comprised of many souls. In Jewish philosophy and non-Jewish philosophy, we find it dominant in Muslim philosophers, without quoting any names right now, that viewed and called the soul the intellect, meaning that their definition of the soul was the intellect, the capacity of the human being to speak, to interact with other people, to do certain things that maybe animals are not able to do. That itself is the soul. So based on their interpretation of what's the definition of the soul, many of those philosophers concluded that the man has many souls because he has many ways of interacting with different people. This is not the position of the Rambam. According to the Rambam, every individual possesses various faculties, but this does not mean that a person has several identities. And the Rambam is very careful of kind of distancing us from thinking that a person has two different realities, meaning that he has a soul, which he has to, first of all, he has to believe that he has a soul. But if he has a soul, and then his interaction with his soul is in one way, and his interaction with his body is in a different way, the Rambam says that that's not the case. When you want to speak about yourself, you want to speak about human beings, you have to speak about the body and soul, or the soul or body together. That soul itself has one entity. It's one entity that kind of brings life to the rest of the person's human, to his psyche, to his emotions, to his faculties of walking, of doing physical things. It's one single entity that gives expression through different faculties, and not different souls that are in different faculties. When there's a soul that's kind of making your brain work, there's a soul that's making you feel, there's a soul that's making you walk, there's a soul that's making you talk. That is not the Rambam, and it's not Judaism's approach. And by the way, it's when I say Judaism, if we look at all other philosophers, Greek philosophers as Aristotle and Rabbi Saadia Gaon, which was 10th century from Baghdad, also share their opinion of the Rambam, that there's one single human soul that a person possesses. So what does that mean? It means that the soul has various faculties, but its parts are not divided. The soul is one and contains the entire human essence. Meaning, as I just said, that the faculties do not give different parts to the human, but are comprised of one single entity, which is the soul, which is expressed through different faculties. So the Rambam adds somewhere else, and I want to quote somewhere where the Rambam says that, as he understands it, is to prevent. Why is it so important? The question is as follows. The Rambam doesn't say it out loud, but if you read through his writings, the Rambam wants to answer another question. Why is it so important for us to to know that we have one soul and not different souls? What does it matter? So what would be the problem if I would say, well, I have many souls, and I, they express themselves through different, whatever you want to call it, faculties or intellectual capacities, etc., etc. Why is it so important? So the Rambam, as he understands it, it's to prevent people from entering into a situation of split personality. There's no external factor, according to the Rambam, of any kind that reigns over all the faculties and abilities of man. Each person, says the Rambam, and I quote, has one identity residing in one soul. What does that mean? Therefore, says the Rambam, man cannot claim an eruption of uncontrollable powers inside of him, exempting himself from the responsibility of such eruptions. Meaning, according to the Rambam, you can't say, well, I have different kind of souls, and sometimes I can't control them. I have eruptions. I speak certain things, but it's not me. There's different faculties within myself, or exterior influence, factors that are making me behave the way I behave. That's not the case according to the Rambam. The soul is one entity that expresses itself through different ways. Okay, so I hope that's clear, as being understanding that the soul is one single entity that expresses itself through different faculties. Now, and that is not influenced by any external factor. Now, when the Rambam speaks about the soul, what is the soul? Did anybody ever see a soul? No. So what is a soul? It sounds a little bit mystical, right? But the Rambam doesn't take that approach at all. When the Rambam uses the term soul, he does not mean a mystical entity of any kind that controls a person from the outside, but refers to the natural life force residing in man. And I like to bring out a point that maybe at the time of the Rambam, many did not speak about, but according to Jewish tradition, everything has a soul. And that soul, and when we use the term soul, to every single entity or any single life, any single things or objects even that exist in the world, all have a soul. What is that soul? It's the natural life force that gives them the ability to exist, or give them the opportunity to exist. Without that life force, according to Jewish tradition, nothing could exist. It's that life force that gives life to every single being in the world. And that applies to human beings, that applies to animals, it applies to objects, it applies to nature, to trees, and so on, completely. So according to the Rambam, the soul is the natural life force residing in man. Now, let's go to after we've established so far that the soul is one single entity that is united with the body, and that it's not compromised of many different souls. We understand now also that it's the life force that's reside in every human being. Okay. The Rambam embraces all the material needs of man under the cover of sanctity of the soul. For him, this is a holy objective. Now, so that means that according to the Rambam, and correct me if I'm wrong, the word religious, the word by itself is of Greek origin. Religious means that there's a time for God and there's a time for myself. kind of thing. You know, there's a person that finds finds that he needs to go to the synagogue to pray, and when he's outside of the synagogue, it is what it is. There's a time for every. According to the Rambam, it's not. It's completely not that. Every single material need that a person does in this world, whatever it is, whether it's sleeping, whether it's eating, whether taking a stroll, is all part of a holy service. I could be sleeping and still serving God in a way. Why? Because I need my sleep, and I need my sleep because I need to wake up in the morning. And why do I need to wake up in the morning? Well, I need to wake up in the morning because I need to go to work. Why do I need to go to work? Well, I need to provide for my family. Okay, why do you need to? Your family will be healthy. I'll be able to send my kids to Jewish schools. I'll be able to do a mitzvah with whatever I'm doing through my whole day. So all the material needs of man are not to be divided into my physical needs and my spiritual needs. They are as one. The Rambam is asking us to sanctify even the mundane and taking things that seem to us physical by their definition or by their expression and using them for my soul and not only for my body. So let's see that inside in his words. It is true that man is made up of a physical component and a mental component, but man unifies them into one entity, not separating between the physical and the mental state, not separating between the body and the soul, and viewing them as one single entity. And this is really a basis to all of Rambam, because if we don't accept that according to the Rambam, then his whole theory just falls apart. The moment we separate body and soul, all of his theory does not work. They are one single entity. Although they look different and they function different, they unify as one single entity. So, in this spirit, says Maimonides, the very fact of obeying the commandment, and this is where it's like the Rambam is taking on something very powerful. He's taking it to the next level. The very fact of obeying the commandments is medicine of the soul and not medicine healing of the body, right? I mean, and we'll give a few examples later on. I know that this is maybe a little bit abstract, maybe still, but we'll give a few examples. When the soul is healthy, although we're doing certain things, a person could be doing certain things to make his soul healthy. How does he do that? By being compassionate, for example, by helping another person. That's a healing to his soul. By obeying a certain commandment, by helping a person in despair, giving tzedakah. Those are things that are related to the soul, but they have a very strong impact on the soul. And why is that, says the Rambam? The connection between them is so strong that medicine of the soul, such as obeying the commandments, exerts influence on man's physical health. And then again, how is that possible? According to the Rambam, because you can't separate between the soul and the body. They are one single entity. They reside together. They live together. They are one single unit. And when the soul is affected, the body is affected. And when the body is affected, the soul is affected. I'm reminding that now just by talking to you about this, about a teaching by a great rabbi, Rabbi Dov, that used the expression of, I'll say it in Hebrew and then translate it. Chor katan baguf, chor gadol baneshama. A small hole in the body is a great hole in the soul. That means that whatever happens to the body will have its effect on the soul, and whatever happens to the soul will have effect on the body. Okay, now that we've established that, are the souls of animals differ from those of human beings? So why is this a question? Well, just look at what we said before. If we go back and we take the Maimonides' definition of what a soul is, which is not a mystical entity, but what did we say? It's a natural life force residing in men. So, and I mentioned this, that every single thing has a life force residing in them. So, based on that, we should conclude that animals also have a soul. And if they do, what kind of soul do they have? Is it the same as human beings? Is it the same kind of life force that resides within all animals, or is it different? So, although Maimonides says that although the soul of each and every animal is a whole unit as well, meaning there's not many souls in a animal, and it's one single unit, just like it is by man. The powers that work in the soul of each of the world's creature are different and adapted to the nature of the animal. And I'm quoting something here from the Rambam. The Rambam gives an example. For the nutritive faculty by which man is nourished is not the same, for instance, as that of the donkey or the horse. Man is sustained by the nutritive faculty of the human soul. The donkey thrives by the nutritive faculty of its soul. And the palm tree flourishes by nutritive faculty peculiar to its soul. Although we apply the same term nutrition to all of them indiscriminately, nevertheless, its significance is by no means the same. Meaning, according to the Rambam, yes, there are many things that animal resemble to man. We both might be doing some of the things. And I'll give an example. I'm sorry I didn't quote that, but the Rambam says even about consumption of meat. Initially, and I'm opening a little bit of making the discussion a little bit bigger. We could discuss that at the end. Initially, man was to be a vegetarian. Adam was not allowed to eat meat, animals. He was not to slaughter animals whatsoever. The whole idea of slaughtering animals only appears the first time by the time of Noah. I'm going all the way back to creation, and the time of Noah when consumption of animals were permissible. So, and what did that means? And I'll venture to share with you the way I understand it is that initially man had no right to take the life of other animals, of other creatures. Why? Because they also have a life force in them. And man's natural state is not to consume any meat. It's not for him. God only permits man to eat meat when he realizes that the weaknesses and the shortcomings of man, of his desire to consume something that is like meat. But initially, it's not something for the nature of what human beings represent. And I'll say that to give you an example. Where things, I think that at least on a religious level, many things did not change. And although we see many religious people eat meat, we find an expression about the consumption of meat in halacha. Halacha says that a person, for example, should eat meat maybe once a week, maybe. And amongst very pious people, the consumption of meat was maybe once a year, twice a year, because of this factor of the natural state of human beings. And although the Torah permits it, it does not encourage it. So I just wanted to, it's kind of like a parenthesis inside here, but the Rambam does quote this, and the Rambam says that, you know, an animal, a predator that eats another animal, is doing it for its survival. It's not doing it for its desires. It does not, you know, it's not doing it because it desires to eat meat or because it has a strong, we like the smell of barbecue. Human beings have like the smell of barbecues, but the natural course of human beings should have been that no meat would have been, should not be consumed whatsoever. Okay, so that's just something that I wanted to bring out. Okay, so once we've established, according to Maimonides, that the soul of man differs from the one of the animal, although animals do carry a soul and they have the same unity, but their significance are different. Now, what kind of influence does the soul have on the body? So Maimonides says that all expressions of the soul, happiness, sadness, pain, depression, joy, and many more occurring in the human soul, direct the manner in which the body will behave for better or worse toward health or sickness. So I think we've kind of mentioned this before at the beginning, but the Rambam says that your state, your mental state, your emotional state, which is, you know, the livelihood that we have, this energy that is in the soul, as the Rambam puts it, has strong effect on your body. Meaning that when a person will put himself in a state of sadness, we could see it even physically. When a person is sad, how would you draw? If I would ask you to draw somebody that's sad without the facial expressions, I know if I would ask you to draw a facial expression, you would make a sad face. But how does one look when he's sad without looking at his face? He's sluggish. He has no motivation. When we feel that our soul is in pain, when we feel depressed, God forbid, when we feel that gives it expression on the body itself. So the Rambam's view is that while the body is a different entity, it still has many influences coming from the soul. And the state of the mind, the state of the emotion that a person puts himself in will have direct circumstances direct influences on his body. So if we were to put it in a practical way, is that the Rambam will give a few examples how that happiness or the state of a mental state can have great effect on the physical part of the person. Okay, so how does one take care of his mental health? What is the solutions? Does the Rambam, until now, we pointed out some of the problems, some of the issues. But the Rambam does offer a practical improvement of the mental health. So, according to the Rambam, mental health lies in the improvement of morals. This will lead to a proper balance in the entire fabric of human being, both mentally and physically. About the improvement of morals, and let's just go through the example that the Rambam brings down here in the 8th chapter. And he says as follows: thou knowest that the improvement of the moral qualities is brought about by the healing of the soul and its activities. Therefore, just as the physician in his endeavors to cure the human body must have a perfect knowledge of it in its entirety and its individual parts, just as he must know what causes sickness, that it may be avoided, and must also be acquainted by the means by which a patient may be cured. So if you notice, the Rambam speaks about two kinds of sicknesses. Preventative. It's pretty interesting that the Rambam already speaks about here about preventative. So when we know what causes the sickness, we have to do certain things to avoid that, right? So likewise, he who tries to cure the soul, wishing to improve the moral qualities, must have a knowledge of the soul and its totality and its parts, must know how to prevent it from becoming diseased and how to maintain its health. So here we see that the Rambam gives equal importance to the diseases, as he calls it, the diseases of the soul, as much as he gives importance to the disease. We'll see the body as it comes a little bit later on. But the same way we treat our body, and we have to exercise, and we have to do certain things, we have to eat properly, we have to take walks, whatever the doctor recommends, the same is true when it speaks about the soul. The soul has to be trained. You have to know how your soul works. Why? Because your soul will have effect on your body. The way you treat your soul, that's the way your soul will treat your body. And vice versa. The way you treat your body, that's how your soul will react to it. And so, according to the Rambam, the same importance that we give our soul, we give our body, we have to give our soul. We have to give our soul. By knowing the different parts of the soul, just like we know the different parts, the autonomy of the body, the same way we have to understand the autonomy of the soul, if you want to use it in those terms. Now, let's speak a little bit about the diseases of the soul. What are the diseases of the soul? So it is the Rambam's understanding that those suffering from a disease of the soul do not have. Did somebody had a question? I just heard a little bit of a noise. Okay, sorry. Okay. It is the Rambam's understanding that those suffering from a disease of the soul do not have good qualities, and that is the source of their diseases or their disease. Meaning, Maimonides tells us here that bad qualities, bad choices in life, we're talking about moral choices here. Making bad moral choices in life equals to making bad choices in life of what you eat, of what you do to your body, of abusing your body, taking drugs. So the bad drugs to the soul is bad qualities, bad choices of moral choices. And the Rambam says it in this way. The ancients maintained that the soul, like the body, is subject to good health and illness. The soul's healthful state is due to its condition and that of its faculties, by which it constantly does what is right and performs what is proper, while the illness of the soul is occasioned by its condition and that of its faculties, which results in its constantly doing wrong and performing actions that are improper. The science of medicine, however, investigates the health of the body. So okay, but the last line is it's not so important to what we said there, because we understand that science and medicine deals with the body and it doesn't deal with the soul. But the same issues that a body has, the same diseases could affect the soul by, according to the Rambam, performing improper, behaving improperly, making wrong moral choices, and leading a life of debauch and immoralities. That itself is the diseases of the soul, according to the Rambam. The treatment, concludes the Rambam with this at this point. The treatment for the mentally ill proposed by the Rambam is based on the same principle used in the treatment of physical diseases. It's fascinating to see that the Rambam doesn't see almost any difference between the body and the soul when it comes to these kind of things. Mentally ill, friends, if you remember at the beginning of the presentation, mentally ill here does not mean someone that has mental disabilities. Mentally ill is someone that is behaving improperly. The Rambam is using this term to underline the importance of the health of the soul just as much as the health of the body. And that's why the term mentally ill here is used. Maybe it's not the right term, because we used to lead to think mentally ill is something completely different. So let's see what the Rambam concludes in regards to that. So as expected, the Rambam directs the mentally ill to turn to what he calls the sages and ask their advice for their health problems. So the sages here is, not I guess, I know what the Rambam, so let's see it inside in the words of the Rambam. Likewise, just as when people unacquainted with the science of medicine realize that they are sick and consult a physician who tells them what they must do, forbidding them to partake of that which they imagine beneficial and prescribing for them things which are unpleasant and bitter, in order that their bodies may become healthy and that they may again choose the good and spurn the bad. So that's on a physical level. So those whose souls become ill should consult the sages, the moral physicians. It's very interesting. The moral physicians, the term used here in the Rambam, who will advise them against indulging in those evils which they think are good, the morally ill, so that they may be healed by that art of which I shall speak in the next chapter, through which the moral qualities are restored to their normal condition. So again, the Rambam here being very, here the Rambam is telling us that, again, comparing it to the physical need of the body, to go to a doctor, to a physician, in order to assess his problems, the Rambam says equally the soul. When we feel bad in our soul, when we feel something is wrong, when we feel that we're making wrong choices in life and things are not going the way they should be going, or whatever it is, or we feel we're not moral enough, the sages are the address to the diseases of the soul. just like a physician is the address for the diseases of the physical body. Okay, so once we've established that, now practically speaking, the Rambam speaks about, I've mentioned this a little bit and we'll give a few examples, but there's something that the Rambam refers to the golden mean, meaning it's kind of like a formula of maintaining a healthy body. A healthy soul. And so let's see. The Rambam's view on how to maintain one's mental health is a combination of both philosophical ideas and educational ones, educational values. Here are some of the things that, I mean, there's so many of them. I wanted to limit to some of the examples that I'm bringing here, but let's just see at least 2 or 3 of them here, of the different principles that the Rambam thinks that we have to apply to ourselves in order to have to be mentally healthy. So the Rambam says like this: good deeds are in equilibrium, maintaining the mean between 2 equally bad extremes, too much and too little. Oh, so this part is what the Rambam calls derech amemutza in Hebrew. Literally translated is the middle path, meaning a person should never be at any extremes. Not to be extreme left or extreme right. That's just a joke, a political joke. But in other words, according to the Rambam, you have to be extremely in the middle. You have to be in the middle to the extreme, not to the right and not to the left. A person should never indulge in certain ideas too much to the left or too much to the right. A person should, and I'll give an example. The Rambam says, for example, a person should never be angry. I mean, that's already an accomplishment in itself, trying not to ever be angry. But according to the Rambam, not being angry is a must. But there are times where a person should display his anger or is discontent to a certain situation when he wants to educate his children, for example. But the Rambam says that at all times when he displays unsatisfaction or anger, he should be calm inside, and only towards the outside should he project any kind of anger. Not to the extremes. And a person should not be, and he gives many examples. When we give tzedakah, a person should not be giving over tzedakah too much, but he should not be also too cheap. Finding a balance between both of these things and being in the middle, neither at other extremes, is what the Rambam calls the golden mean. And by the way, I wish I could talk a little bit more about this. This is very, there's many more examples that I could share with you maybe some other time, of examples of what is exactly mean, the golden mean. The virtues recommended to men are the following, and they are all good to live by as long as the golden mean is observed. Asceticism, generosity, not to be jealous, right? Respectful behavior, courage, modesty, kindness, and patience. These and more are the noble virtues of the soul of a healthy man, in the Rambam's words. These are what keep our soul healthy, and in return, as we mentioned, keeps our body healthy as well. Any extremism in one or more of these virtues may affect the health of one's soul, and this is mind-blowing. Any of these extremes can affect the health of one's soul and cause a disease of the soul that may express itself in physical illness. And this is, I think, one of the novelties here that after this whole introduction of the soul being one and the way it interacts with what is the soul and the way it interacts with the body, this is really one of the biggest novelty of the Rambam, that is of the opinion that once the soul finds itself on any of the extremes, it could cause, which is a disease according to the Rambam. Finding yourself on any of the extremes is a disease of the soul. And that itself could give expression in physical illness. Okay, so we spoke a lot about the soul. Let's go through the body, some of the example with the body. Of the way
Rabbi?
Yes.
Would you like to field some questions before moving on?
Yeah, sure. Please.
Does anybody have a question? You have to unmute yourself.
Should I stop sharing the screen, or is that okay?
No,
like
it's
this?
fine.
Okay.
I mean,
Rabbi, you weren't sharing the screen for a little while now. I don't know if that was done on purpose or not.
No, I did.
it's being shared, Rose.
shared
Maybe
all
you're
the
not
time.
in speaker view.
I don't see it. How come? It stopped at one point. It stopped.
Really? Does anybody else have this problem? Because I
No.
see it on the screen. You are screen sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know why. It just. I'm sorry. Then it's my problem. I don't know what it is.
Just press on the speaker.
Rose, I can come over right now and fix it for you.
Please do.
We have a question on the floor. Go ahead.
Yes.
I have a question. This is Gigi. I wrote it in, but you might not have seen it.
Let me see.
So what I want to understand is, how do rabbis who are responsible for determining whether meat or chicken is kosher, how do they allow for these creatures to live with so much suffering? For example, chicks are kept in these massive cages. According to vets, they are mentally, they're insane. Anyway, their claws are cut off, which keeps them in a state of continual suffering. Cows have hormones given to them so that their udders are painfully full, 24 hours a day. And all this for economic reasons, so they'll produce more milk. Their calves are taken away from them at birth. So how can this treatment be reconciled with kashrut?
Well,
Yes.
yeah. Well, look, as I mentioned, is with kashrut, first of all, there are many laws that cover the laws of kashrut, and the laws of kashrut might not include a very basic halakha and understanding of Judaism to inflicting any pains to animal, which is completely forbidden according to halakha. It's not brought down. In other words, it's not in this section. In Jewish law, the book of law has 4 different sections. Not inflicting any pain to animals is not in the same section of kashrut, but it's definitely it's something that is forbidden according to halakha. I can't speak to other rabbis, but myself, I could give you just an answer of my experience of kashrut compared to other establishments or organizations that have mass. It's not called slaughtering, but mass killing of animals, of chickens and cows. I think the kashrut world is a lot more respectful, at least in my experiences, because I visited many plants. In my experience as a rabbi, I myself learned ritual slaughter, shchita, which I actually didn't enjoy whatsoever, but it was part of my training as rabbinical training, and the level of respect that is given to to animals, in my experience, was a much higher level than what we see, for example, and many establishments where there's millions of chicken that are slaughtered every day, and if one is doing it, so that's first of all. I think that the level of carefulness in kashrut is a lot more respected. And second of all, I think that there are people that don't necessarily always follow what the Torah tells you. So I can't give you any example of people, because people have to be responsible themselves. But I can tell you what the Torah says, and the Torah says, and the Torah is completely against this kind of behavior towards animals. And if I would have to categorize it here with the Rambam, I would say the Rambam is one of the diseases of the soul, of mistreating animals. According to the Rambam, is definitely the disease of the soul. And if someone chooses to do so, it's a decision, a personal decision of that precise rabbi, or whoever is affecting this kashrut to do so. But under no circumstances does the Torah allow such behaviors to animals.
I like what you had to say, and I know that that Judaism says to be kind to the animals, and the manner in which you're supposed to kill an animal is very humane. However, once you have mass production, rabbis, unfortunately, I know this, have found loopholes, religiously legal loopholes, like they're arguing with God and they're winning a fight. And all this to make money, it really, really bothers me. I happen to know somebody, he was a shochet, and he became a rabbi. He said at the beginning he was enamored of not just the philosophy of Judaism, but the way, you take an animal's life if you have to take an animal's life. But years later, he went to some slaughterhouse, and he could not eat meat for weeks on end after that. And he said, the principles are there, but in mass production, they're not doing it. And it really, really, really bothers me. And by the way, one last thing. You said that the very pious do not eat meat, or they eat meat very infrequently. Is that in today's world?
Oh, in today's world, yes, definitely in today's world. I'll tell you for myself, I eat meat rarely.
Oh, good for you.
Rarely eat meat. I also went to, and it's not because of my experience in slaughterhouses. I just, meat is not a necessity.
Right.
And you could pass on meat, you could pass on chicken, you could live without meat.
Absolutely.
And I'm of the view that people should, I don't want to make a statement now that people should become vegetarians, but I think it's a personal choice that people have to make. Right. And I definitely encourage it, definitely. And I remember my rabbi doesn't eat meat the whole year. There's no meat on his table until today. The only time there's meat, and very small quantities, is during the Chagim, maybe on Pesach, Rosh Hashanah, and that's the only time where there'll be meat on his table. So yes, there are many pious people until today that don't eat meat altogether. I recall Rabbi Cook. Rabbi Cook was a very known
right.
Beautiful man, beautiful.
Vegetarian also.
Vegetarian and And I remember I want to share a story with you, just a very short story, that Rabbi Cook, I remember reading this a few months back, was taking a walk with his student, and his student was I think he broke a branch, or he took a leaf off a branch on their way on their stroll, And the rabbi completely stopped, Rabbi Cook, and said, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
And the man didn't even. He was like, "Well, I don't know. What did I do? I'm sorry." And he said, "You just broke a branch, or you took out a leaf for no reason. Why?"
Right.
He says, "Well," he says, all beings are, God's creatures.
Right.
So just to yeah. So he was a very sensitive man.
Beautiful story.
Yeah. So
Rabbi, can I just add something about Rabbi Cook?
of course.
He said, because I'm reading right now a fascinating book. It's Judaism and Vegetarianism.
Show
Because
it
as
to
you know,
us.
I've been
Can we-
vegetarian for
Can we
many,
see the
many
front? Can we see the front of the book?
Here, can you see it?
No.
No?
Yeah, now we see it. Okay.
Oh.
Who is it written by?
It's written by a Richard Schwartz.
Okay.
Nothing to do with my family.
I was going to
But
say.
anyway, it's fascinating because it brings us to what you're talking about today, about the body and the soul. And what he says is that God did not want us to be vegetarian, meat eaters. And it shows from the beginning. He brings up quite a few examples of what God says and what our sages said. For example, in Jeremiah, it says, "Build your houses and dwell in them, and plant gardens and eat the fruit of them." So many, many passages that says to eat the fruit of the land. But Rabbi Cook said he sees people's craving for meat as a manifestation of negative passions. He and Joseph Albo is another, believe
Great
that
philosopher.
in the days of the Messiah, people will again be vegetarian.
Yes.
And he says that one of the reasons why God did not mean for us to eat the meat is that there's a soul. The animal has a soul.
Yes.
And even when you kill it, the soul remains alive.
Yeah, definitely.
So I just wanted to share that bit of information.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Rose, and thank you, Gigi, for your questions. Rabbi, you may continue.
Okay. All right. So let's see now the body in the Rambam's view. So the meaning and essence of the body is clear and understood. The Rambam's vision fits with the universal understanding of all the elements of the body structure, the physiological and other process taking place in it. Now, the Rambam has something which is called the regimen of health. And in the Rambam's view, non-observance of proper living habits, which are based on the laws of nature, may result in diseases. And so let's see what the Rambam says about this. The regimen of health. Among the things men must do in order to maintain a healthy body, taking care of a proper, sensible diet and proper eating habits, physical activity, gymnastics, and observing other proper and sensible living habits, such as sleeping hours and manner of sleeping, sexual relations, etc. The Rambam speaks about everything, every single thing. And what's interesting about the Rambam, I speak to my children about this many times, in today's society, we have a great problem of obesity. And because we have the luxury of eating whenever we want, whatever we want, whenever we want, I mean, just Uber Eats and you have everything at your doorstep. The Rambam speaks about an idea, about two things that I've seen people do. The Rambam says, first of all, don't ever eat until you're full. Never eat until you're full. Never. Your stomach should never feel like you're completely full and bloated. Eat 3/4 of your capacity and feel always a little bit not full, satiated. That means that, according to the Rambam, overindulging in eating could be also a major problem of diseases. The Rambam speaks about, and not only the Rambam, the Halacha speaks about, and I found this fascinating. I spoke to this about with Charles Shemi the other day, about this idea of fasting. Not fasting for religious purposes, just fasting, it was a custom that people would fast 3 times a week at least. Meaning people would fast Monday, Thursday, Monday, Monday, Thursday, Monday, Monday, Thursday, Monday, through the whole year. And this is a custom that is brought down in halacha. It's a custom that was maintained for many years, and I know a lot of people until this day would fast. They would, and then there was something that's called, I don't know what term they use today. There's a term in medicine today that it's fasting until 12 p.m. Fasting half days.
Intermittent fasting.
I'm sorry?
Intermittent fasting.
Intermittent fasting. Okay, very good. So this is something that the Rambam, this is fascinating because you have to remember the Rambam is over 800 years ago about discussing already about the need of a person to not overindulge in his eating and fasting at least a couple of weeks, a couple days a week. This would not include a ritual fasting. For example, every Erev Rosh Chodesh, the eve of Rosh Chodesh, was a custom where people used to fast. And then they would go again through the cycle of fasting Monday, Thursday, Monday, Monday, Thursday, Monday. It was the day. So those are things that, according to the Rambam, is the need for the body to stay healthy. And in order to find this balance between a healthy soul, now go back the other way. Until now, we were talking about the health of the soul affecting the health of the body. Now the Rambam is saying the same thing, working the other way around. When you overindulge in eating, when you don't take a walk, breathe fresh air, have a standard of good habits of living, of eating properly, could affect not only your body, but it could also affect your soul. The Rambam speaks also about sleeping. The Rambam says that a person should sleep at least 8 hours a day, 8 hours a night, minimum. Well, the truth is that he says you should sleep for 8 hours, work for 8 hours, and learn Torah for 8 hours. But that's a tough one. That's the Rambam. I tried to speak to the Rambam to give us a break, but he doesn't seem to compromise. So in any case, the Rambam divides our daily life into 3 parts. Learning for your mental, again, because based on what we've seen so far with the Rambam, that the soul has the same weight as the body in terms of keeping it healthy. So he's saying, look, you want to invest in your body, you want to have a healthy body, you have to sleep properly, you have to eat properly, you have to work properly, and at the same time, you have to also, you have to work on your mental health by working on the needs of your soul and not only the ones of your body. Okay, but let's go. Bodily health is no less important than mental health. So, I know that we've been talking a lot about the soul, but the Rambam gives the same weight to the body. We see that the Rambam attaches very much importance on maintaining the body, no less than maintaining the soul, which is the framework on which the body resides. Both body and soul constitute the essence of man. And the Rambam says the following. The following is the basis of Rambam's philosophy on the need and meaning of maintaining the body. The body being healthy is one of the ways of the Lord. Meaning, don't think that, my life is, I have to take care of my body. It has nothing to do with my soul. It has nothing to do with serving Hashem. No, keeping a healthy body by all means keeping the healthy ways of connecting to God. For it is impossible to understand or know the knowledge of the Creator while unwell. Therefore, one should keep away from things which destroy the body and accustom oneself to healthy and curing matters, which are as follows. One should never eat unless one is hungry. You don't eat to have fun. The body needs it. So don't eat when you're not hungry. Nor drink unless one is thirsty. And nor should one hold oneself back for even a single moment from relieving oneself. It's, there are practicality. You need to go to the bathroom, don't hold it in. Go to the bathroom right away. That's how we keep a healthy body. For whenever one feels the need to pass water, okay, one should do so immediately. So from here, in the what I mean by from here, if we look in the chapter where the Rambam discusses about the different eating habits and how one should eat, the Rambam also enumerates a few good foods that are good for us. The Rambam speaks about meat as well, and the Rambam says, don't eat too much of it. Don't eat too much cheese, the Rambam brings. I didn't enumerate them here because they're very long. There is a book, a full book of different terminologies that the Rambam brings down as what are considered good foods. The Rambam speaks about nuts, he speaks about dates, speaks about figs, which are like superfoods according to the Rambam. The Rambam speaks about not eating meat too much, eating a lot of vegetables, stay away from even sugars, even natural sugars. Eating too much fruit according to the Rambam is also not good. And if we follow the Rambam's golden mean, the Rambam says too much of anything is no good. Whatever it is, even if it's fruits, even if it's dates, don't eat too much of anything of that. The Rambam, just to enumerate a few examples, speaks about very old moldy cheese. And he says, not good for your body. Stay away from it. You eat it from time to time, it's fine, the Rambam says. Don't eat too much moldy cheeses. I'm just giving some examples. So for that, this is not the place really to elaborate on some of the things. You could look it up. There is a book. There are very modern books out there that try to apply some of the Rambam's teaching. Although we have to remember the Rambam wrote his understanding of the body over 800 years ago, and things might have changed. But the skeleton and the basis of his philosophy of holding a golden mean and a golden path of being neither on the other sides of the extremes, both for the soul and the body, what keeps a very equal equilibrium between body and soul. And while having a healthy soul, we'll have a healthy body. By keeping a healthy body, we'll be keeping a healthy soul.
Can I ask you something?
Of course.
Thank you.
I finished my presentation now, Grace.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If anybody wants to ask question, let's yes. Go right at it.
So you have finished or not?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's Gigi Bito again. So
yes,
what I wanted to say is that Maimonides always stressed balance, right?
Yes.
Balance in every aspect of life.
Yes.
Even in terms of committing oneself to study, he says even that discipline has to be balanced with work. So he basically split the day up into 3 parts, 1/3 sleep, 1/3 work, and then 1/3 study, which means also you get experience in life, and also you are self-reliant. Well, and so how do you people who consider themselves quite religious, how do they reconcile that thinking with the fact that they study all day, they don't work, and they depend on their wives and their parents or parents-in-law to support them? I think there's an imbalance. There has to be an imbalance in their growth, and it has to affect other people as well as themselves. But again, what rules do they use to get around not following the laws?
Okay, yeah, that's a very big question. I'll try to answer that as short as possible. I want to bring out a point that today, first of all, the Rambam would disagree with all these rabbis today.
Oh, good.
I want to say that straight up. The Rambam would not be of the opinion of people sitting all day and learning and waiting for their wives or whatever the case may be, and waiting for their parents to come to their help and so forth. So the Rambam is completely against that. The Rambam says a healthy person has the equilibrium between working, studying, investing in time in spirituality and your soul, and working as well. Now, you have to remember one thing, and this is a very big discussion. But if we look at it historically, Sephardic, the mainstream of Judaism today, and I'm sorry if I'm opening a big can of worms now, the mainstream of Judaism today is a very Ashkenazic way of seeing the world. And I'll explain to you what I mean by that. If you look at the Rambam as time when he's in Spain, most of his contemporaries and his students were all physicians, doctors, philosophers, poets. They all went to work. It was part of society. It was part of the culture. People living in Spain were mathematicians. It was a very Sephardic way of life, between the balance between Torah and Mad'a. What later on we see with Rabbi Raphael Shimshon Hirsch, 18th century, way before in the Rambam. And the reason for that is Ashkenazic Jews lived in Ashkenaz lands were not able to go to universities until 17th century. A lot of the Ashkenazic Jews were not able to go to. They lived in ghettos. They didn't have a relationship with the authorities. Universities and schools were not open to them. So there was a whole culture around of Torato Umanuto. And I'll give an example to that. You know that when the books of the Rambam arrived in Ashkenaz countries, a lot of his books were burnt publicly.
Wow.
Publicly burnt. I'm not going to get into all that. It's a fascinating time in history where the Rambam was viewed as someone that was a philosopher and brought different strange ideas to Judaism from Aristotle, Socrates, and as he quotes them himself in many of his books. But it was something that was foreign. Let's just put it this way. The great books of philosophy from the 12, let's go back a little bit even more. The first book of philosophy was written by Rabbi Saadia Gaon that lived in Baghdad, 9th century. That was the first book of philosophy ever published. From then on until maybe 14th century, most of the philosophy books written in the Jewish world were all from Spain. It was not part of Ashkenaz culture to learn philosophy altogether. They even hated it. It had nothing to do with their lives. They didn't get involved in math. Just look at the sages that lived at the time of the Rambam, the Baalei Tosafot, which were great Talmudists, and like there's none like them through the whole world. But Very few are the writings that you will find among the Balei Tosfot that lived in Ashkenaz, whether in Germany, in England, or in France, which wrote philosophical books. They wrote many commentaries on the Torah. They wrote like Rashi, the great Rashi, his grandchildren and his son-in-laws that we're dealing with. So, and today, I think a lot of that still exists amongst very Orthodox community, where they kept the lifestyle of staying in, maybe secluded from the other part of society and sitting down and learning, and they believed in that philosophy, because they say something like, well, if we don't sit and learn Torah, the Torah will be forgotten. And we have to have people sitting and learn Torah all day to preserve the Kedusha and the sanctity of Torah. But according to the Rambam, that's completely unacceptable. We've seen through generation that many sages went through the same thing, and they kept jobs, and they were, there's stories about great sages of the Talmud that were peddlers, that had jobs working the land. And if we look at tractates like Baba Kama and Baba Metzia and Baba Batra and all these great tractates, Talmud tractates, we find a lot of discussions about problems in the fields, and one guy goring the other guy's ox, because that was their reality. They lived on farms, they worked in farms, they had jobs, they had, and so the Rambam today will tell the people that are sitting in Kollel all day that I do not agree with that. And then there are other rabbis that would say, with all due respect to the Rambam, we have a different ideology, we have a different philosophy, and they have a source for it. There was a question of two people that were arguing back and forth about communism and democracy. And after an hour of trying to figure out whether the Torah is democratic or it's communist, they turned to the rabbi and they told him, Rabbi, is the Torah communist or democratic? So the rabbi told him, well, you could find sources for both of them.
Right.
Because the Torah, the Torah and the Talmud is full of different opinions. And you could find probably a sage that said, that was very close to Marxism. And you could probably find a sage that was very open-minded, but that doesn't mean that is the ultimate opinion of the Torah. The Torah compromises of many different opinions. And in this case, the Rambam says, well, I disagree with, the example you gave, Lakewood or whatever, these establishments of sitting down and learning Torah all day at different cities, and the Rambam would disagree with them.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you so much. We'll take one more question. Anyone? Okay, Evelyn, you have to unmute yourself. Evelyn Shaheen?
Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. At the beginning of the lecture, you said everything has a soul, even the object. I didn't understand it well. What do you mean by that, please?
Yes, of course. Okay, so according to Judaism, everything exists in a way where without God's involvement in creation, nothing could come to existence, right? So this is the simple understanding of when God created everything from nothing. Let's just put it in simple words. God created the world from nothing. How did he create the world? Well, there's let me just open up with another story. There was once a rabbi that asked a kid, and he told him, how do you know that the world exists? So the kid looks around and he said, so the rabbi tells him, no, think a little bit deeper. How do you know that the world exists? How do you know that this is not only part of your illusion? He's becoming a little philosophical. So he answered him, well, it says in the Torah God created the heaven and the earth. How do we know that something exists? Because the Torah tells us God created the heaven and the earth, and it created everything that is inside of it. Now, the rock, let's take the example that I gave, the stone, the rock, the plants also have a soul in a sense that they don't have an animated soul like an animal, because, you know, what's different between something that's inanimate and something and plantation is that plants, they don't move from place to place, but they grow. The inanimate doesn't move, it doesn't grow. Animals already move around. Human beings not only move around, but they're able to also communicate. So when we say that everything has a soul, that means it's the life force that God gives that specific thing in order to exist. When God said, let there be light, let there be ocean and heavens, let there be stones and birds or whatever it is, those words that God pronounced, if you will, still give, those are the life force of every existing being in the world today. That's what I mean by soul. It's the life force of everything. God is, like the Talmud says, just like our body has a soul, the world also has a soul. What is the soul of the world? It's God himself. So God, by creating every single being, that by definition is the energy that gives expression in every single thing, and that gives the ability for something to exist. That is the soul that I'm referring to. I hope that's clear.
Thank you. In a way, yes.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Pinto, for an inspiring and wonderful evening you've given to the sisterhood and the synagogue and the community at large. We're very thankful for you coming out of your vacation to honor us with this evening. Before I ask everyone to unmute yourself and applaud and thank Rabbi Pinto, I wanted to let everyone know that the Sisterhood has Super Tuesday every Tuesday. And with these lectures, we are also raising money for the Spanish and Portuguese. So any donations that you'd like to do in honor of Rabbi Pinto for tonight's lecture will be welcome. You call Linda Aboudi or go on the link that I posted on the chat. To let you know, tomorrow we have a yoga class from 10 to 11. If you're interested, just give me a call or email Sisterhood and we'll send you the link. It's $15. And we have something very special next week. We have a Hanukkah evening led by Rachel Gabai. We have Rosie Sharabani, who is going to sing for us with her guitar, as well as Moriel Shaheen, who's going to sing for us. And of course, we have a trivia that Rachel is going to lead, and it's going to be male versus female. So I'm hoping that we are not going to outnumber the men. We need more men to join and be entertained by us. So thank you again, Rabbi Pinto, for a lovely evening. Please, everyone, unmute yourselves and applaud.
Thank you. Merci.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you,
so
Rabbi.
much. Thank you again, Grace. Thank you to the whole sisterhood. Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you, Rachel,
organizing.
for this
Beautiful.
inspiring.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you very much, Grace.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Rabbi Pinto, I just want to say one thing. I wish you can do
Thank
it.
you.
I said I wish you can do it another time with something. It was very interesting, very nice.
My
I
pleasure.
wish we can do it again.
My pleasure, Angel. Maybe we'll this will get.
Yes, I would love to. There's so many
force.
things that I didn't know that you told us now about it.
Wow.
Really.